All set.
You may want to flip your names too. You and Vanessa, Dorian and Vanessa are now flipped in terms of names. So, but I'll call us to
I'm
order.
Vanessa. Mark, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. I will call the Personnel Board meeting to order. It is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. It is 8:30 a.m. and we have 3 members present. First item, and you'll notice this is kind of a shift in how we've ordered the agenda, but we are going to start with public comment at the beginning of the meeting. So I'll ask and see if there's any public comment. I am seeing none. So we will go to the next item. Next is election of vice chair of the Personnel Board. So unfortunately, Michelle tendered her resignation from the Personnel Board a few weeks ago. That leaves the vice chair spot open. So we need a vice chair. So which you would like to be nominated?
I'll nominate Dorian as the vice chair.
I'll second that nomination. Dorian, are you okay with that?
I'm okay, but I just need you to understand, I am really not available in December until like the 16th. I can't do anything prior to that. So if you need me to do something, I can't. I have a wedding. So I am
Understood.
completely out straight. So if vice chair has to do something from now until like December 16th, I'm not going to be available to fulfill that responsibility. So otherwise, it's fine.
Okay. I think we will make that work. So
Okay.
I appreciate the nomination, John. Dorian, I appreciate your willingness to do it. We have a motion that's been made and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. John,
Aye.
Dorian,
I
and I'm an I as well. So that's a 3-0 vote. Administrative business, approval of the October 8th, 2024 meeting minutes. Any comments or questions on those? I will move that we approve the 10/8/24 meeting minutes as presented. Is there a second?
second.
All right, we'll give Dorian that tie vote on the second. Roll call vote. John,
Aye.
Dorian,
I
and I am I as well. 4B, employee transition report. Vanessa?
sure. I just want to update the board that Debbie Keefe will be joining the clerk's office. It's a part-time administrative assistant. She'll take the role that was held by Kate Battles. We didn't list Kate Battles as resignation because she'll continue to work to help out the clerk's office from time to time. But Debbie will take over the hours generally held by Kate in the clerk's office.
Okay, welcome. Anything else on that, Vanessa?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to board discussion and approval. Discussion, so this, we're going, I guess this is really 5A, but discussion of existing employee salary structure. Consideration of the pay and class study off cycle and review of funding sources and or future action items. So Mark, do you want to bring us up to speed on your research and discussions around funding to start? And then we can go into discussion of where we may go with this.
Sure. So as the board is aware, we had took a look at trying to do, I guess, what I would call a little bit of a strip down salary review. And we had put out on our request for quotes. We'd only gotten one back. It was a little bit pricey, and we had thought about the possibility of maybe trying to strip that down, strip the quote down even further to try and see if we could accomplish what we're looking to do. We did talk with Labor Council I think one of the key points was if we did this now, would this actually count as our requirement to perform this review every couple of years, every 4 years, because we would be doing it 2 years early. So the select board was requested to see if there was ARPA funds available for this. Select board, I believe the two chairs had talked, and ARPA funds were not available. So I had some more conversation, I think, with Jason offline, and quite frankly, I think this is at this point in the year where we are, even if we were to get somebody on board, we would not be able to get probably get done what we want to get done in time to have it ready for an annual town meeting in the spring. It would be rushed. As you know, these processes have limited impact, I guess is a good way to put it, in their outcomes. And I don't want to add another component into it of it having been rushed. And so, my suggestion would be that if the board wants to continue to try and do this off cycle, that you look to do this as an FY26 expense and do a full study, rather than just try to do, this, I guess, stripped down version of it. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Comments or questions?
I'm inclined to agree to wait till do a full study in 2026.
Jason, you do have a hand raised from Paul Sabelli.
I saw that, and we'll get to Paul in 1 second. Yeah, I think given the cost that we're talking about, this is something that's typically approved at town meeting, right? And especially where we're going off cycle, and I'll call it the ARPA bucket is not being made available to us now. And I do acknowledge Mark's comments about potentially rushing a process as well. I do have some interim ideas that we can do without satisfying the quadrennial review, but I do think I'm very supportive of a placeholder, whether it be in our budget or as a special article, Mark, for next year, in putting that eyes wide open so that you and Brian have that in the budget now, as we move forward. So let's take Paul's question or comment and go from there. I'll come to you in a second, John.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Jason, I missed the last couple of meetings. I'm just wondering who is pushing to do this interim adjustment? I mean, I don't think anybody on the SAP is. Who exactly is looking to do it?
So it originated over the summer when we were being asked as a personnel board, which is one of the requirements of the SAP, to bring department heads in at above step 8, so above midpoint in our prior language.
Mhm.
That what the personnel board discussed at the time was making sure that we are being equitable to all, and that's what originated this RFP process to see if we could do something now. I do think there are also at the business administrator level, we continue to hear some feedback about that role, and obviously we have 3. We have business administrator 1, 2, and 3 in terms of how that also is presented. So we have heard some noise around that. But again, like Mark said, any one of these processes certainly will benefit some, but it never will benefit everyone that believes that should be benefited. So, and I think Mark used the words limited. I do agree with that choice of wording. So that's where this originated from, Paul, at this point.
So what do we have? Another 2 years to the next one? Is that what you were saying, Jason?
So till our next required one, yes.
Because it just seems to me, we're that close, why waste the money? That's all.
Anything else,
Thank you.
Paul?
Nope, thanks.
All right. John?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I think we ought to let it go the full cycle, 2 years from now, do the full study. I don't hear any great clamor for to do this. There'll always be something that should be adjusted, but my vote would be to let it go the full cycle to 2 years from now.
I think for today, all we have to decide is whether we're going to abandon any efforts for FY 25. We do not need to decide whether we're going to do this in FY 26 or FY 28 today.
Okay,
Okay. In terms of ideas that I would like to at least study at what I believe should be no cost, but I do think I would like to ask Vanessa, Mark, and anyone else that you think is appropriate to just look at how other communities are structuring their business coordinators, business administrators. I think, those words tend to be used interchangeably between different communities, and just provide insight of how they're doing that. Again, I'm not even talking about pay, but just how they evaluate that, how they structure it, so that we can potentially see if there's anything we need to consider there, both short and long term. Anyone disagree with at least looking at it at no cost?
no,
No.
Room 3 has their hand up, so I have no idea who that is, but I'm willing to take them in now.
We'll see.
Hi, sorry, I was watching on YouTube. This is Katie Berry. So then I signed in quick through the website, but I just wanted to speak to Paul. Thank you all. I do think that there's an urgent need to do something sooner than the 2 years. I know that the more we bring in people above midpoint and people who have been here for a while or below that, and other issues do need to continue to be discussed. I don't think it's a waste of money because as you see people kind of get a little bit upset seeing that, they're looking, they might leave, and you're going to be spending the money on new employees anyway. So that's just my 2 cents and where I think for me, it came from as far as talking about this now as opposed to later. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Any other commentary on this particular item?
Nope.
I if there's, I hear what Katie's saying, but if there's, say there's 8 individuals that are still, I'll use the word perturbed, but for the lack of a better one at the moment, isn't there an avenue that they can bring that forward to us under the SAP?
You're saying if employee A really thinks their particular classification is out of whack, out of grade, is there a mechanism for them to do that?
Yep.
Is that the question?
Yep.
I mean, I would, there are some provisions, and I don't have it necessarily handy, and I'm not going to go try to find it, but I think there are some provisions around it that we had some discussions around last year. But I would also think that we as a board can always entertain requests, regardless how informal or formal they are, but they would ultimately have to be effectuated through a town meeting vote. I think the pros of doing that is obviously being nimble, to deal with changing job conditions as people move forward, and the economy of what jobs are hot. But the downfall of that is, employee A brings something forward, but employee B doesn't? And are you, kind of, solving one problem, but creating another? Seems to be some of the issues we've seen in the past. So, I'm always willing to listen. Whether we act, I think, certainly comes down to a set of facts and circumstances. But it does kind of lead to part B of what I want to start to look at, and this may come up again on a later agenda item, is we do need to create some flexibility to deal with these one-off situations, and whether it's language in the SAP, to deal with these interim 4 years. I mean, a lot can change in 4 years, as we all know. So I do think it is incumbent upon us to examine whether there is language we can put in and/or potential funding sources that we can put in to deal with midterm inequities. But again, you may solve one inequity and create another. So it's the push and pull. So it's just a balance we're going to have to continue to discuss. So, well, I think that the topic of a full study appears to be off the table for the current time period. I do think there are other discussions we can continue to have, both broadly within what we can control in the SAP, but also, more broadly than that in terms of the town administrative bylaw that we don't control per se, but can certainly make recommendations around related to personnel.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm off base, but I think the problem that we have is when we did the previous study, we brought in new people at an equal or higher grade than what 8 or 10 of our old people are at, and that doesn't sit well, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing that it certainly doesn't sit well, but you also, each position is different, right? It's not like the only position we hire multiple people at are some of the library positions and the business administrator positions. We don't have multiple people in each of these department head roles. So while there are certainly some that are in the same band, right, from a grading perspective, there are some differences as well. So
thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.
yeah. Okay. We will go on to the next item then, which is request for funding of MMA Suffolk Finance Seminar from the accounting department. There was a memo in the packet. Were there any questions, or did anyone want to speak further to this?
I'll just add, Jason, that this was a recommendation from Carla McAuliffe, the town accountant, that Debbie has been with us for a little over a year now, and this program is really ideally suited for her at this stage. It's an all online program, so it doesn't require her to travel anywhere. And it's about 40 hours worth of professional development, not including homework. So we do recommend that the personnel board fund this so Debbie could attend this program.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions? I'll move that we approve the request from the accounting department related to the MMA seminar. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
Roll call vote. Dorian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I am aye as well. All right. Item C, discussion of FY26 funding. So the first is going to be around annual salary adjustment, i.e. how much we want to adjust each of the items in the salary grid. As a reminder, anyone that has not hit the top step will automatically move 2% due to their time and grade, pending a satisfactory performance evaluation. So what we are talking about is a true COLA that would be incremental to the 2% for all of the employees that are moving year over year, from whether it be from step 1 to step 2 or step 8 to step 9 or anything in between. There is some data in the packet. I did have a preliminary discussion with Mark and Vanessa. Some of the municipalities are very early on in what they're doing as well, but I also think we need to think about what's right for Southborough, and that may not be what's right for other towns based on their structure. But I do think it's important that if we can come to some consensus, at least for now, that we provide some guidance today for how these departments should be submitting their operating budgets. Because as everyone's aware, when we do this later on, it causes a lot of updates on Brian's side, in particular on the finance team, as the budget cycle ensues. So if we have a general indication of where we're going, obviously subject to further conversation with other boards and committee, including select board and advisory, that ultimately will bring a budget forward to town meeting, I think that is important. So if we vote a 1% here now, this would really be a 3% for most folks. If we vote a 2%, it would really be a 4%. If we vote a 3%, it would be 5%. And obviously you can do anything intervening of that. So welcome thoughts based on the data that we see in the packet, some of the conversation candidly we just had, and anything else that you'd like to consider.
Did you say we could vote 3% for
We
26?
can vote, you could vote 10% if you wanted to. I mean, you could vote we can vote any number. It then goes through the budgetary process. So we're making an initial recommendation that's obviously going to go through a bunch of different steps.
So if we vote 2%, everyone's getting a 4% raise.
As long as they get a satisfactory performance.
Right, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have thoughts on where you want to go with this based on the data, Dorian or John?
We did 4% last year.
I think it would have been a 3 and a 2 if I'm not mistaken, but I need someone to confirm that. Maybe Brian can.
I think it might have been 4.5 last year. I can check on that.
Okay.
That rings a bell.
That's because we were trying to make some corrections. We were making a lot of corrections on the previous year with the Collins report, so.
Okay, on the grid, the way it's set up right now, there's 2% there, right? If they go to another step.
Correct.
Okay.
So if we vote a 0, they really get a 2% raise.
No,
I would be inclined to go to the 2%. So they would get 4%.
Okay.
Based off the two grids that are in front of us.
but
Mhm.
that's only if they change grid steps. Or that automatic every year?
As long as they have a satisfactory performance evaluation. And as long as they haven't maxed out at step 15.
Last year is it was adjustments to go to the grid. So this year, the grid is set at the 2%. And I think that looking at this statistic here that we got, that compensation for state and local government has increased 4.7, so I don't have anything wrong with another 4.
Just to be clear, John, are you suggesting 2% so they get to 4%, which is what Dorian is proposing? Or are you proposing 4 on top of the 2 to get to 6?
No, I think 4.5 is total. It's fine with me.
Okay. I don't want to put Brian on the spot, but I think it's important to understand the impact of 1% on the budget. I mean, we are talking about a lot of employees, but I think big picture in a $50 to $60 million budget, every 1% is not significant compared to everything else we're talking about. So I want to be careful with how we think about this. So I don't know, Brian, if you can speak to each 1%, the overall cost that it is.
Sure, can you hear me?
Ken.
Good. So it's just under 38,000 for each 1%. So it'd be your present situation would be about $150,000 total to implement a 2 and 2.
And really two of it is to try to recognize the tenure of the employee, right, and the experience that they're bringing to us, versus the other two would purely be for inflationary type items. Before I go to comment on this, does the board have other questions or thoughts? So it seems like both of you are at 2% right now from a COLA perspective to get to 4. Or are you at 2.5, John? Because you threw out 4 to 4.5. So I just want to understand where you're at.
No, I think it, whatever, it should be at least 4%.
All right, I think this is Katie again.
Yes, sorry, I can't log in because I forgot my password. But yes, so I do appreciate that we now have a step system and a COLA. I'm just a little bit confused because I feel like they should be separate and maybe not spoken together. Like the 2% is for tenure and a great overall feedback from your supervisor and doing a good job. And then the COLA is a cost of living. Inflation's really high. 2% just doesn't feel like it's going to make a big difference for the people who are working here and looking for a COLA to equal what they can, afford. So I appreciate having both. We're used to 3, 4 is better. I just don't know that that's going to be enough for people to continue to work and live. Thank you.
Are there any other hands, Vanessa? Looks like Lori.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
So just following up to kind of what Katie said, I agree. It's a little confusing to talk not separately about the COLA. So on the paper that you have, the government employees increase of roughly 4%, is that relative to COLA only?
Vanessa will have to speak to the source. I agree it's a little vague, but I don't know if they're because some
actually Brian Ballantyne provided this to me, but the personnel board likes to from time to time review the CPI. So I think it is based more on COLA, but I'll ask Brian to correct me if he wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, it's just a general index that the government uses that it calls out some of the consumer, you talked about the CPI, but the CPI contains some wonky type of indexes in that really aren't relevant to government wages. So this is more just I think what they're trying to get to is just a general, how wages have increased in that sector, calling out, stuff like food and just weird, CPI stuff.
So, I mean, I could be wrong, but this does read like it's all in, right? Like government employees on average went up this amount, which may or may not include steps depending on your position, right? In tenure, et cetera. The one thing that in retrospect I wish we had in the packet is I think it's always important to understand what our unions are seeing. albeit the unions are outside of obviously our purview. They are negotiating with town administrator and the select board. And they all do have steps up to a certain level, and they all do have COLAs baked in. I'm not comfortable going below for our SAP employees, the COLAs that are baked into the union contracts in a given year. So I don't have an analysis of each of them handy. I don't know if anyone does, but that would be my starting point. And I realize it's two different things, but they all are working for the same employer. And I realize there's different negotiations that occur, but I would like to use that as well, just as a benchmark. If, let's just say we went with the 2 that's been proposed now, but all of our unions and department heads are getting 3 from
Yeah,
a
man.
COLA perspective. I just would like to know that. I don't know if anyone can answer that off.
So those unions are in negotiations right now, Jason, so we don't have any data settled for FY 26 yet.
So every union's
Correct.
open right now,
Yeah,
other than the schools, which I realize is outside of your
yes,
control,
yeah.
right? But on average, what have those been the last couple of years?
Let me just double check that. Hang on.
All right.
Can someone mute Lori?
In general, Jason, those have been 2s and 3s.
Okay. All right.
So Jason, if we went to 3, if we do 2, it's 2 and then it's 2. So if we went to 3, could we keep that other piece at 2, the COLA at 2 or 3? So they end up getting 5 instead of 4. I'm not really sure where we could play with the number here. If we went.
We're discussing the COLA right now.
Right, all right, so could we make that 3 so that they're getting 5%?
Yeah, I mean, the only other way you could do it is if we want to further incentivize tenure as opposed to COLA, you could make it 3% between each step to start and do you're gonna get the same spot. But if we're trying to differentiate between steps and provide greater incentive around tenure with the town, you could adjust the actual steps so that there's a 3% between each of them.
So we could basically make an additional grid here. And the grid, we could say shifted 3%. Then what happens with COLA? Would that be 2%?
Whatever we decide, but yes.
Okay. Does Brian, did you do a graph that would give us what those numbers would look like in a chart?
Not for changing the grid itself. The steps were baked in it too, so that's all I've done. But I mean, we certainly can do it, but I haven't done it yet.
Go ahead, John.
I'm getting, it doesn't take much, but I'm getting confused here. I understand the grid, and that's going to be 2%, but they have to move. The employee has to qualify for that. The cost of living is the actual cost of living is up about what, 4.5 on national scale.
Yeah, it seems like that, John. Something
Yeah.
in that area, yes.
Yeah. So I don't see how we can. I can't in good faith to our employees recommend any less than 4 to the cost of living.
So before we go to Lori, I've been pretty quiet. I haven't showed my cards yet. Where I'm at is I think we need to provide budgetary guidance today. I don't think we need to land on how we splice it between, do we adjust the difference between the steps and in the COLA, but I think we need to kind of provide some initial guidance. So what I would like to propose is that we instruct the departments to budget 5% incremental for each of their SAP employees that aren't subject to contract. That's for budgeting purposes. But I also think we have an obligation of the personnel board to engage in a conversation in a public meeting with the select board around this topic. And I think we need, they ultimately are the appointing authority for most, but not all of these employees. And I think they need to understand the difficulty in the conversation that we have on a regular basis around this topic and get kind of validation of the path that we're going down. Too often, I think what I've found in the last couple of years is, we vote on a number and it just goes in the budgets. Select board really talk about the budget in very detail with the advisory committee, but no one really narrows into like what the impact is. Like we're talking about with Brian in terms of what every 1% does. What's the cost of retention? What's the cost of recruitment? And creating a balanced approach. So I would like to take, if we vote on 5 or some other number today for budgeting purposes, I would then like to take that, more broadly to the select board to have a discussion around potential ideas to create, either A, flexibility around this, or B, get a commitment from them that they do continue to be invested in making this a place that we want to, not only recruit top end talent, but retain top end talent. In what are the mechanisms that we're going to utilize both monetarily and non-monetarily to retain the employees. I'm also firmly believe that compensation is one factor of employment. I think there are other factors that you cannot weigh in terms of flexibility, who your manager is, and many other things that are intangibles that go well beyond anything we're going to discuss today. But I think that is also a reason why some people stay or go from certain areas of employment too. But at the end of the day, we need to create a situation where we are not so out of place with comparable jobs in other communities, and also create an environment that people want to come and stay. So that would be my suggestion for today on this topic. I welcome discussion around the percentage that I've thrown out, and then I think we can discuss and refine over time once we get feedback from the appointing authorities, whether, we are on the right path or not.
Okay, Jason, can I ask Brian a question?
Go ahead.
Brian, if we go to 5%, please correct me, is that going to be a cost of $190,000 then to the taxpayers?
Yeah, you're pretty close. About 180, 190, somewhere right around there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
John, do you have something before I go to the public comment?
No, I still got something to say here.
Go ahead.
The grid is there, right? That's going to be automatic.
Correct.
We put that in last year. That's there. That 2% is there, no matter what we do. That's there, unless the town meeting throws it all out.
Or we decide to adjust.
Yeah. Okay.
The amount of each step.
My thought on that is we let it ride. Let it go for a little while and see how that works out. But what we're really looking at, or what I'm looking at, is the cost of living, the COLA. And we got to separate that. They're going to get to 2% anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They're built in the grid. So what we really should be looking at is the cost of living. Okay. And as I said before, in my humble opinion, anything less than 4 is a slap in the face or whatever. We've got to at least go 4.
So you're suggesting 6.
Pardon?
You're suggesting that they should then,
Suggesting 4.
you're saying less than, you gotta be very clear here. Less than 4 for a COLA is a slap in the face, or less than 4% combination of the COLA plus the step?
Less than 4% in the COLA. It's a slap in the face.
So that means you're proposing at least 6.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go to Lori and then Taylor.
So following up to what Mr. Thorburn said, that's kind of what I was going to point out. I understood that the graph was in place. It's going to be 2%. It just makes it easier. It's a great tool, and we use that first step every year. With all due respect to this board and the previous personnel boards, I think this is where we got in trouble in the last several years with falling so far behind, in that rather than talking about just COLA, we're kind of wrapping it all into one. So the 2% is going to be there. It's in that position for a reason. And my thought is that the board should only ever consider the variable of this, which is COLA. Because in the past, our raise was kind of COLA and step all wrapped into one, kind of where we got in a little bit of trouble. So just my opinion, but I think to make the conversation easier is COLA only.
Thank you, Taylor.
Can you hear me?
Ken?
Okay, thanks. I think you answered my question in the discussion, but I just wanted to clarify, Jason, when you're talking about 5%, you're saying combined COLA and seniority raise, correct? You're not saying 5% COLA? Sorry, I just got a little confused there.
Yeah, I'm saying for budgeting purposes, yes, combined COLA and step increase.
Okay, thank you.
And I said at least, just to be clear.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So, but yeah, because I think the goal of today, and Mark can keep me honest here, is to provide budgeting guidance that hopefully will not change significantly. And I
Yeah.
realize once we set some guidance, it's very hard to change, especially to go up. I know.
No, that's great. I think, when we are talking about it, to other people's point, it gets kind of muddled. So I just wanted to be very clear about what you were saying. So thank you.
Yeah. And I firmly believe in we do need to continue to talk about both. Because if we're trying to recognize tenure, then 2% is not enough between each step. In most communities, I can tell you from at least the early stuff I've seen, no one's higher than a 3 right now in the COLA. Just so everyone's aware. I haven't seen any data that suggests any communities going higher than a 3. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that that's the other data point we always have. So does everyone agree this requires a broader discussion than just the personnel board at this point?
I do.
Okay. So we have 2 numbers that have been thrown out in terms of a COLA. If you use my initial math, I was proposing at least a 3 COLA, which would get the departments to budget at 5%.
Yep.
John has thrown out a 4% COLA, which would ask the departments to budget at 6%.
You could,
Go ahead, John.
the 2 step, the grid, that's there. They should be figuring that right along. They have to put that in their budget. That's what we're going by. I think we've got to address strictly the COLA, the cost of living. That's that 2%. That's going to be there if we don't change that grid. That's going to be there until we change the grid. I hear, Jason, I hear what you're saying about other places the grid might be 3%. That's fine. But until we do that, or if we consider doing that, which Personally, I don't think we should right now. We can look at that, but the cost of living, that adjustment has got to be at least 4. So if it's 2 automatic and plus 4, that makes 6. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the way you budget is you look at the total amount. But you're right, we're just looking at the COLA is what we're being asked to look at today, unless someone wants to revisit the 2% between steps. So I guess, Dorian, where are you at on this?
I'm to ask the department heads to budget for 5%, and let's see where we land. We have to look at the overall cost that's going to affect the budget, and that's more of advisory. I mean, I want to take care of the employees, but you have to be cognizant of what the impact's going to be on the taxes with everything else that's coming at us as well. So, and we really don't have all that information. So I'm more comfortable with budgeting at 5% right now.
All right, so Dorian, you're proposing a 3% COLA. John, you're proposing a 4% COLA.
At least.
All right, we're gonna take one more public comment on this, and then we're gonna make a motion and a vote. So I assume this is Sarah, but I don't know for sure.
Yes, sorry. I just want to say, I appreciate all the discussion on this. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. So I'm trying to find the best way to say this. I appreciate the personnel board making decisions in the best interest of employees and then letting advisory make decisions about the impact to the budget. And, putting forth what you think the recommendations are based off of what you think is in the best interest of the employee, what you feel is fair, and then letting it take its journey through advisory, through the select board in terms of the budget process from there. But, I know you appreciate thinking about the impact to taxpayers, but I feel when you're wearing your personnel board hat, if you can put your taxpayer hat aside, I know it's a consideration, but it will flesh out in the end. And advisory and the folks that are charged with, really looking at the impact to the budget will do their job and ensure that it's feasible. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. All right, do one of you want to put a motion on the table? Or you want to compromise and align so we have a unanimous vote anywhere? Or I don't think this is the last of this discussion. Let me be very clear. Because we've already agreed we need to bring it forward, which I think is sort of what Sarah's also saying. But I do think we need to think about the broader impact as well. I don't think we can operate in a vacuum as much as we do want to advocate for employees.
I'll put a motion on. I motion that we increase the cost of living portion to 4%.
For a second. I'm going to second for discussion. Any discussion? All right. You want to vote it?
Yep.
All right. Roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Dorian?
No.
And I'm a no. I'm going to put a secondary motion on the table, though. I'm going to recommend that we put forward a 3% COLA with the understanding that we need to approach both the select board and advisory for a broader discussion about how we compensate our employees, with the general understanding that we may advocate for a higher than 3% COLA as part of those discussions, But this motion should be seen more as preliminary guidance to start the conversation with that broader group. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion of the motion? All right, roll call vote. John,
No,
Dorian,
Aye.
and I am I as well. So I will coordinate that discussion, and realize that this is an incredibly difficult topic for everyone. And I certainly am not done with this topic, and I think it will be a standing item. And I think, we'll see where it goes. Next topic is going to be approve extension. Oh, sorry, draft of the FY 26 Personnel Board budget. So when is this due?
That would be December 9th.
Okay. And should we be, if we are going to do a paying class study in FY 26, which I realize is still a huge question mark based on the discussion we've had. Should it be in our operating budget, or should we approach it as a special article?
Previously, we've always done it through the operating budget, but certainly that's up for discussion, a warrant article.
I personally like the warrant article because it creates lumpiness in your year-over-year budget versus maintaining kind of a steady,
More consistent,
sort of.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would propose that we put a placeholder for budget for a study. We'll discuss that and vote on that at a future date. But then for purposes of the budget, I see absolutely no reason to change any of these line items. But welcome discussion or feedback from others. Any thoughts on that?
I agree.
John?
agree.
All right, I'll move that we submit initial budget request for FY 26 to be the same as the FY 25 budget, including each line by line description, and also submit a placeholder article for a paying class salary study, subject to further discussion and vote of the personnel board. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right,
Thank you.
roll call vote. John,
Aye.
Dorian,
Aye.
and I am I as well. Next is approval extension of administrative hours for ZBA conservation under section 13 of the SAP. This is an ongoing discussion. I appreciate Vanessa, you and the team bringing this back when we asked you to bring it back. So thank you for the follow-up there. So I think the current request is to go through March 1 of 2025 with this memo. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And has Labor Council reviewed this?
Yes, we've been, excuse me, in contact with her about the extension of these hours.
Okay, and you have that in writing, that it's not causing any issues?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Any questions or discussion around this?
No.
All right, then I will move that we approve the extension and the administrative hours for the ZBA conservation under section 13 of the SAP. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. John,
Aye.
Dorian,
Aye.
and I am I as well. The next is discussion of constitution of personnel board under section 15 of the SAP. I asked for this to be added once Michelle resigned. Obviously, having 3 out of 5 members appointed at this time is going to create logistical challenges for even calling a meeting, because all 3 of us are required. to be there currently. Even one of us drops off, the quorum is gone. Obviously, we aren't the appointing authority, but I wanted to at least tee up a discussion so we could have it with the appointing authority and potentially even invite the moderator in next time. We've had a spot open since Barry resigned last spring. I think there have been a few people that have come forward, but ultimately not ultimately sought appointment. And now we have a second spot that's open. I think this discussion goes part and parcel with the next one related to the town administrator bylaw. But at least for purpose of the discussion, I would like to propose that we seek that the SAP be amended at town meeting to go down to 3 members, not 5 members, moving forward, just due to the turnover that we've seen. And, you know, they may or may not see it as the time goes forward. I think it's important, at least currently, that the person on board remain. But at the same time, the board needs to be effective and operate. Again, I think this is a broader discussion than just 3 of us on the screen right now. But I do think we need to start to tee it up, and just wanted to see if there was any reaction to that commentary.
Did I understand you to say that you have been talking to prospective members?
There have been a few people that came forward, but ultimately sought not to seek appointment because of their schedules.
Oh, I personally, I would appreciate knowing who might be interested. You know, I spoke to a couple of different people, and they told me no, they don't want to be involved in town doings right now. But I think at least one of them might be able to be persuaded. But if there's other people I might know that you're talking to.
Well, that's not what we're talking about, John. We're talking about longer term, right? So between now and town meeting, we're a 5-member board. It's actually really between now and July 1st, right? We're a 5-member board. We're gonna need all 3 of us to be here unless the moderator appoints 1 or 2 people, which I hope he does. But I think we need to have a longer term discussion about what the right size of this board is.
Okay, that's the discussion. Okay.
Discussion, yeah. So I think I will invite the, unless anyone has any objection, I'm just gonna invite the moderator for discussion at our next meeting around that. He may have some strong views one way or another, and I think his views should be heard, especially as the one that appoints each of us.
Agree.
And obviously I see there's a bunch of employees here as well. We welcome your feedback at a further point if you have a strong view of that, you know, obviously seeing the turnover that we've experienced more recently. Item F is somewhat related, but came out of, again, the resignation is, you know, as we continue to have this sort of turnover, I think it does impact the effectiveness of the personnel board. I think we all know there's been much discussion around what other communities do and what their town administrator bylaws and potentially charters say about the authority of the town administrator related to personnel matters. And I think we know where, you know, Mark has ultimate authority right now and where he has to come to the board for certain authorities. Again, this is a broader topic than personnel board, but I guess what I wanted to see is whether this board wants to open that discussion with the select board in particular about whether we look to try to modify some or all of the portions related to personnel and think about what the role is of the personnel board of the future. I don't have any ideas of what that would or would not entail, but I think we need to get what I'm at least proposing is getting the options on the table for further discussion.
Wouldn't that conversation take place with the appointing authority, which would be Paul, and not the select board?
Well, I think it's probably both, to be honest with you, because the the select board ultimately would need to sponsor something related to amending the town administrative bylaw versus the moderator would need to be involved with the personnel board bylaw.
Okay.
And I think we need to be educated, right? And this is maybe we have Kate come in and educate us on what the options are, looking at what our current town code says, what other towns do, and what the options are, so that hopefully there's a collaborative solution. And it may be exactly what we're doing, just fill the seats, or it may be something more broad than that generates a lot of discussion.
I think that's a better next step, to talk to Kate versus going to the select board with this right now. I think we
So-
should understand where we can go, what we can and can't do. And I think she would be a better avenue to at least pursue for a first step.
Okay. My suggestion, if you're open to it, is we invite Kate to a posted personnel board meeting in December, but we inform the select board of what we're going to be discussing and let them host and participate in the discussion, and also notify the moderator. Because I think it's better if we're all part of the same and hear the same thing. We don't need to, again, decide anything, but I think it's, I just want to get discussion rolling. I don't know if it's going to turn into anything or not, but I do think it's an inflection point for us.
That's a great idea too. I want to understand what we can and can't do. And I understand the select board would be the one to be changing the town administrator's responsibilities, or however everything's being changed. But since Kate is our labor personnel, she's our attorney, I really think we need to talk to her and get her thoughts on what we can and can't do. So, and of course, Paul should be involved in any of these discussions because he's the appointing authority. So I do like the idea of all three with us.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Could I ask Vanessa, could you print me out or send me the actual copy of the town administrator bylaw?
Sure, I'll circulate it to the whole board, just in a copy at the top
Whatever
of your
it
inbox.
is now.
Yep.
And I said before, one thing that in this current environment we're in with hiring all these vacancies and matching salaries for versus who's going and who's coming in. I think Mark needs a little more leeway on that, but that's something to discuss later.
Okay. Anything else on that topic?
No.
All right. Next, if we can bring Taylor over for G and H. The first one is review, approve, suggested revisions to Business Administrator 1 job description for the Board of Health. As all of you know, I have historically recused myself from these discussions. I don't have that option anymore, so I did file, even though I was advised I didn't have to, but I did file a voluntary disclosure of potential appearance of conflict of interest, given that my wife Chelsea is the chair of the Board of Health. I do not plan to vote on these matters, but I do plan to be here to maintain a quorum for the next two items. So just figured I'd get that on the record. And Taylor, why don't you just walk through what's changing on the Business Administrator 1?
Sure. Barbara has added some additional duties and responsibilities to her job here in the Board of Health. So just to keep it up to date, we decided to update her addendum. And you can see too, I don't know if it's in the packet or not, but what things we changed. Basically, we added language of review and update posted septic information as needed with the assistance of the sanitary inspector. And then we also added a piece in about working with OpenGov, as that's our plan in the future to start using OpenGov and utilize that to do our inspections.
There are questions from John or Dorian?
The only question I have is, are we doing this because this position is going to need to be regraded? Are we looking to move this to make changes in that direction? Is that why we're making these changes? Are we just updating this?
Right now, we're just updating.
Okay, thanks, Taylor.
We do. Right.
Any other comments before we let Barbara speak?
Nope.
All right, you can bring Barbara over.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay.
I feel like I'm on the Verizon ad. Can you hear me now? No, but I would like to be considered to be compensated for what I'm doing. The last time it was brought before the personnel board, it was not even compensation was, nope, that's it. Where I am taking on more, and I don't mind doing that, but I just would like to be paid for the work I'm doing, the extra work, added work, I should say.
Okay, so my question is still gonna be, we're making these changes, we're adding responsibilities. So if we're adding responsibilities and the employee is actually looking for a higher compensation, are we going to regrade this? Are there enough changes in the responsibility level that's going to warrant this to have a change in the grade or the step? Because it sounds like that's what the employee wants. So Taylor, again, is that where we're going with the next step once we make these changes?
So the board, it got brought to the board and the board voted to accept and update the revision. They did not discuss any financial changes.
So I will just clarify, the only thing that's on our agenda and that we can vote on today is updating the job description.
No, I understand. I was just looking for which direction, if she knew why we were doing this. So I understand that this is what we're voting on today, Jason. I'm just trying to get a handle on why now. So
I think the idea behind it is to keep a current record, and because Barbara is doing additional duties, that way it would make it easier to review. And if your board decides to go back and review the changes, that they're updated and make it easier for you to decide that yourselves.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Thanks, Taylor.
Okay. Is there a motion related to the updated job description?
Make a motion that we approve the changes for the business administrator. The business administrator 1 job description. We accept the update provided today.
And just add Board of Health into your motion.
Oh, okay. I make a motion that we accept the Board of Health changes in front of us for the business administrator 1 position.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Dorian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I'm abstaining. Next item is approval of a vacation request for the regional health agent position pursuant to SAP section 11B2.
All right, Jason, I just wanted to note that Mr. Sabelli has his hand raised.
We're going to keep going. I'll come to him once we get through this one. So Taylor, can you just provide quick background on this?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So we recently, the board recently gave a conditional offer to a shared health agent between Northborough and Southborough. The conditional offer being on the new employee's request of 3 weeks vacation. He currently works in a municipality where he gets 3 weeks vacation, doing this essentially the same job that he'd be doing for us. So we are coming to the board just requesting that 3 weeks be approved as a new employee here in Southborough. And my board voted on this last week as well.
Any questions or comments on this?
So this is a shared position with Northborough?
Correct. So they'll be working 20 hours here and 20 hours in Northborough.
So when we're giving 3 weeks vacation, we're gonna be paying for a week and a half and Northborough's paying for a week and a half of the vacation? Or is he getting 3 weeks here and 3 weeks there?
No, it would be a week and a half and a week and a half, correct? But
perfect.
essentially, we had a long discussion with select board about this, but basically we pay up front and then it gets reimbursed by Northborough to us.
So if
Okay.
the employee separates employment down the road and they have an accrued vacation balance on the books with the town of Southborough, because they're a Southborough employee,
Correct.
that monetary amount of payment would be split between the two towns, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks for the
any further
clarification.
discussion?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the request?
So moved?
Is there a
Second.
second? Further discussion?
Nope.
Roll call vote, Dorian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I am I as well. You can bring Paul over now before we go to other business.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jason, just getting back to the barber thing, I think one of the, Dorian had mentioned, are we looking at a grade change? Now, I know it's only updating the job right now, but instead of a grade change, is it something that the Board of Health could come back and just bump her up an additional step for the additional work? Is that something that could be considered? I mean, it would have to be initiated by the Board of Health, but would that be something to consider when an employee has other things added on instead of just regrading the whole thing?
I think we are always open to discussion. I don't want to commit beyond that.
Okay, so it is something that the board could come back and ask you for.
People can certainly ask, right? It goes, I think someone asked something about something similar earlier. I think, I will certainly add stuff to the agenda and the board can discuss and act. But it has to come from the appointing authority.
Okay, is Taylor there? I'm just wondering,
She
do they
is.
have any discussion on that? I haven't watched their meetings.
There was not discussion on that.
Okay. All righty, thank you.
All right, is there any other business for today?
You planted the seed.
All right, board calendar, Dorian, what I'd ask you to do is if you can just message Vanessa and myself when you will be coming back up for air in December, and then we can coordinate around those dates and see if we can get a meeting in before the holidays. Does that work?
I'm available starting December 16th.
Okay.
And not on
All right.
Christmas Day, obviously, but yes,
Well,
any
yeah,
other
yeah.
time is fine.
Okay. All right, we'll send around availability for after the 16th. All right, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second,
Hang on, did I do a vote on the 3 weeks vacation? I'm losing it.
Yes, you did.
yes.
All right.
Yep,
got
and it was approved. We voted
All right.
yes.
All right. All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second,
All right. Roll call vote. Dorian,
aye.
John,
Aye.
and I am I as well. All right, have a good day, everyone.
Take care, Jason. Happy Thanksgiving.